Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Jeffrey Epstein Show. I'm your host, Bobbycapucci, and this is Daily Drop number 148. So, I'm usually pretty critical of Congress, as you all well know, and I'm obviously not the biggest fan of just about any of the lawmakers that we have voted into office. But, as usual, when somebody does something I agree with, well, I'm going to give them their props. And Congresswoman Jackie Speier is that person today. Now, this is the second time I've had to give Jackie Speier props in the last few weeks, considering at the State of the Union, she also stepped up to the plate and invited a survivor of Jeffrey Epstein's as her guest to the State of the Union. So credits given where credits due, and it looks like Jackie Speier asked the Department of Justice about Jeffrey Epstein's status as an informant. So this is an article from the New York Post, and the author is Sarah Dorn, and the headline is, Democratic Congresswoman reportedly asked DOJ if Epstein was FBI informant. And we all know the FBI will be forthcoming, right? We all know that the FBI will tell the truth if Jeffrey Epstein was an informant. I mean, they've never had any reprehensible informants on the books in the FBI. That's never occurred. They've always been an organization that's on the up and up with the American people. We can trust the FBI, folks. A California Democrat gave credence to a wild Jeffrey Epstein theory on Capitol Hill this week, asking a top Justice Department official whether the serial predator was an undercover FBI informant, a report said. All right, let's back up here. A wild Jeffrey Epstein theory? That's wild, that Jeffrey Epstein was working for the FBI? I don't know about wild, a little bit off the mark. As we all understand here on the podcast, he was being protected by intelligence, and I'm sure the FBI played whatever role they played in it to run interference and to, quote-unquote, lose information or whatever part they played. But obviously, anyone who's been following the evidence here understands that this was an intelligence operation, and the FBI really didn't play a part, in my opinion, at all. But still, I think it's good that Representative Jackie Speier has the courage and is at least bringing up, the case in general. Representative Jackie Speier reportedly asked John Demers, the Assistant Attorney General of the National Security Division, the way off-topic question at a House Intelligence Committee briefing on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act set to expire in several weeks, the Daily Beast reported. So I think that the Surveillance Act is very important as well. I think that the government should not be able to spy on Americans, and I think that if you are not familiar with who Bill Binney is, I think that you should stop whatever you're doing after you're done listening to this podcast and do a quick Google and take a look at who Bill Binney is and see what he has to say about intelligence again, Surveillance Act, again, how they use the Surveillance Act against the American people. And again, look who's in charge, intelligence. Is that shocking to anybody out there at this point, that intelligence would have their fingerprints all over something like the Surveillance Act as well? But during that meeting, Representative Speier fired off an Epstein question. And I was talking with my dad about the same thing. We were talking about it. I said if I was a congressman, I would have done the same thing at whatever meeting I was at. If there was a Department of Justice official in front of me that was already under oath, I would have definitely had some questions. And I don't care what the topic would have been that the committee was discussing. I would have swerved off the reservation and asked my own questions, because we know that the Justice Department isn't being forthright in this case. We know that the Justice Department is not telling us the truth, and we know at the very least there has been an absolute shit show going on, from the video being lost to all the other things that have occurred. We know that the Justice Department really is not a reliable player in this at this point. She introduced her inquiry by noting the obvious. It was not on the agenda, the outlet reported. Demers answered that he had no knowledge of Epstein working for the agency, noting that he works for justice, not the FBI, according to the report. Well, look, Demers is smart here. He says, I don't have any knowledge of it, so he's not definitively answering it, and he's very answering in a very political way, as you would expect somebody in his position to do. You know, they don't just pull numbers out of a hat to send people in front of Congress, right? Demers was sent in front of Congress because not only is he aware of what's going on in the capacity of an official of the Justice Department, but he's also probably a wily politician as well, as a lot of these bureaucrats are. And that's no knock on Mr. Demers. I'm not familiar with him or what his work has been inside of the Justice Department. And, you know, it's just the way of the world over there. That's just how it goes. You know, these guys that come in front of the camera or in front of Congress, they're chosen because they're wordsmiths. They know what they're doing, and they're trained to deal with situations like this. So he's not going to pigeonhole himself and say, oh, no, Jeffrey Epstein definitely wasn't an FBI informant or whatever, you know, he might have been for the FBI, according to Ms. Speier. He's not going to come out and definitively say one way or the other, right? He'll say to his knowledge, blah, blah, blah. And we see this time and time again with these officials who are under oath. And it's just, you know, it's just the way they always operate. So, again, I applaud Ms. Speier for, you know, asking this kind of question. But we know we're not going to get a straight answer from the Department of Justice. That's for sure. The lawmaker's question was reportedly sourced from a theory that law enforcement may have gone easy on Epstein in 2007 Miami child sex abuse case because he helped finger his powerful friends. Huh. Well, I don't know about all of that. We know that it was a lot different than fingering his powerful friends from what we have been able to follow the evidence, where the evidence has led us, is that he was protected because he was an asset, and he was still an asset that had use. And these guys don't burn assets if they feel like they can continue to get some wear and tear on them, right? They already had the situation set up. They had all of the gears in motion. They had Ghislaine Maxwell on the inside already. They're not just going to burn their asset, which is Epstein. So, again, I don't really think that the theory of Epstein working for the FBI holds much water, but at the end of the day, we're all just spitballing here, right? And I think that's what Congresswoman Speier is doing. She's just trying to maybe rattle a cage here, get the case back out into the public eye maybe, and show that she is not going to, stop talking about the case, because now we've seen her, two separate times. She's now asked hard questions here with the Justice Department official. Well, maybe not hard questions, but she's asked some questions here with the Justice Department official, and her bringing one of the survivors with her as her guest to the State of the Union was also solid. So, we're gonna see what Ms. Speier does going forward, but so far so good, yeah? His 18-month sentence, of which he only served 13 months, has been seen as lenient. Some said the deal was a favor from federal prosecutors for providing tips to investigations described as valuable considerations, the Miami Herald reported. Again, I don't really think that Epstein was working as an informant for the FBI. I believe that he was an asset for intelligence, but I need, let's see some more evidence here. If they're going to say that he was an informant for the FBI, we're going to have to see the evidence for that. Because so far, I have not seen anything tangible that points in that direction. Now, has the FBI and the CIA and intelligence been known to work hand in hand and share informants and share assets? Of course. So could Epstein have been used by FBI? That's definitely not out of the realm of possibility. But at this point, there's nobody who's going to convince me that Epstein was anything but an intelligence asset. It's just the evidence is overwhelming at this point. Speier's inquiry, geez, sorry about that. Speier's inquiry was not the first time law enforcement has been pressed about its ties to Epstein. In July, former Labor Secretary Alexandria Acosta, the U.S. attorney who granted Epstein the Miami deal, was asked by a reporter if the financier, pedophile, was an intelligence asset. So there has been reporting to the effect, he said, according to the Washington Examiner. And let me say, there has been report to a lot of effects in this case, not just how, but over the years. And again, I would hesitate to take this reporting as fact. The DOJ and Speier declined to comment on the inquiry to the Daily Beast. And what Alexander Acosta is doing here is just not answering the question. Again, like a good politician, avoiding the whole thing. So there has been reporting to that effect, he said. And let me say, there's been report to a lot of effects in this case. He's saying nothing here, folks. He's just muddying the waters, trying to make it, answer the question without answering the question. And all that does is lead us back to the beginning. And when he told the Trump transition team that he was told that Epstein was hands off and that Epstein was an intelligence asset. Now, we know that he told this to the Trump transition team. It's been reported. So Acosta obviously was, an end around was done on him. And he was just another piece of the puzzle here. He was used as the fall guy, as the front of this plea deal. But we know it came from higher up. We know that it came from whoever in the intelligence industry, the intelligence agencies was able to pressure, the prosecutors or whoever they got to, because that's how they operate. That's what they do. They make sure they act from the shadows, and they manipulate things from behind the scenes by putting pressure on prosecutors, offering people sweetheart deals, etc., etc. And we see that with intelligence on a regular basis. And we know that Jeffrey Epstein could not have committed these crimes just as a simple FBI informant. There would have been way too much pressure on his handlers for this to be a regular informant who's being run, like the way they ran Henry Hill or the way they ran Whitey Bulger. It's just too much, because although Whitey Bulger and Henry Hill were dealing with powerful mafioso, Jeffrey Epstein was dealing with the world's most powerful politicians and business oligarchs and those sort of people. So it was a very different kind of operation. So, again, I think it's good that Jackie Speier is asking these questions. I wish she would ask some questions about, him being an intelligence asset maybe next time. But we can't expect the Mr. Demers here from the Justice Department to give us a straight answer or to level with us. That's never going to happen. At the end of the day, they're all politicians over there. Everybody that they send to Congress, everybody that they send in front of a microphone, these are all people that are trained in the way of public speaking, and they know how to answer the question without answering the question. And that's all we get from these folks. But I thought this article was significant because at least Jackie Speier is asking the question that everybody else in Congress should be asking as well. They should be convening congressional hearings about Jeffrey Epstein's activities, who he was associating with, and if the court doesn't want to release the files that they have, that Ms. Preska has shot the Miami Herald down recently about, well, then maybe Congress and the Senate should initiate their own investigation. How about we get a special counsel, a special investigator to look into the negligence of the federal government in this case? If we can have congressional hearings about steroids in baseball, you mean to tell me that we're not going to have congressional hearings about one of the most sick, sadistic trafficking rings in the history of the United States of America and perhaps even worldwide? I think that it warrants a more stringent look. I think that Congress and the Senate should start doing their jobs, and instead of fighting and engaging in tribalism, should come together at the very least on a topic like this and call all of these people before Congress and put them under oath. And let's get moving on this, because if the Justice Department won't do their job, then it's up to the people who are in charge of the oversight of the Justice Department to do the job. And if that means they have to call people in front of Congress and have congressional hearings, etc., then that is what they need to do. Because this sticking around in neutral and sitting idly by while nothing happens, and while these people continue to walk the streets, and while people like Ghislaine Maxwell are still skulking about in the dark, and the Justice Department still does not do anything, considering they have all the evidence that they have, it's very disheartening. And the United States Congress and the Senate should definitely step up, fill the void, and do the job that the Justice Department and the rest of the law enforcement higher ups refuse to do. Because if something has to give here, something has to give. And Jackie Speier talking about it on the floor of the House is a very good first step. And hopefully more congressmen and congresswomen and senators follow suit, and they start asking hard questions, and they start asking a lot of questions about how Jeffrey Epstein was able to get away with what he got away with for so long. And also, these people need to be called in front of Congress, the people that were enabling him. And that if we can have congressional hearings for the things that we see these people having these hearings for on a daily basis, for them to act like this doesn't warrant hearings and an extra look, well, I don't know what to say about that. It's disgusting, honestly. If we have the resources for them to waste with the nonsense that they wasted on, we certainly have the resources to have hearings so that these survivors can get the justice that they deserve. And also, if it comes to light that anyone in these federal agencies was acting as a buffer or a protector of Jeffrey Epstein, then they need to be brought to justice as well. Nobody's above the law, folks. Nobody is above the law. And I don't care if you're in the CIA or the FBI or whatever it is, whatever alphabet agency you work for, you are not above the law. And it's up to Congress and it's up to the Senate to hold these people responsible, because that's where the power of oversight comes from. So hopefully we see more of this in the future, and hopefully we see it in a lot more targeted manner, meaning actual hearings where that's what the agenda item is, and each one of the congressmen and congresswomen sitting on whatever committee that calls for the meeting, each one of them can go through and ask questions and call witnesses or whatever it may be, because the Justice Department obviously does not give a damn about law and order anymore in this country. All right, everybody, if you'd like to contact me, you can do that at bobbycapucci@protonmail.com. That's BOBBYCAPUCCI@protonmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter at BOBBY_CAPUCCI. And if you enjoy the content and you would like to help support the podcast, you can do that by clicking on the GoFundMe link inside of the description box. All right, folks, I'll be back tomorrow morning with your usual morning update, and we'll have the daily drop. And yeah, we'll go from there. Like I said, I'm still putting together the trip from Santa Fe. I'm putting as much time as I can into getting it ready to go by, looks like Monday we'll do it. Monday evening. We'll have that out for you, probably about 35-40 minutes more about my trip to add on to the other 40 minutes we've talked about, and we'll talk a little bit more about what some of the sources said, etc., etc. So look forward to that coming up Monday. I'll try and get it out tomorrow night if I can get everything ready to go, but I've just been swamped since I've gotten back from Santa Fe with the real world as well as the podcast stuff, and I'm moving as fast as I possibly can, folks. So until then, I hope everybody enjoys their Saturday evening. And like usual, if you're going out and you're going to have some drinks tonight or whatever it may be, please do not get behind the wheel of your car. Until tomorrow, everybody, I will talk to you then.